welcome to episode 2 of the Battle Royale podcast. I'm your host, Elwood Jones, and joining me, of course, is my co-host, the Professor, Mr. Stephen Palmer.
Hello, hello, hello.
On our previous episode, we introduced to several of our classmates as we looked at the opening of the cult classic that is Battle Royale. Today, we're obviously looking at the bus ride, as that's what this chapter is going to basically entail. But at the same time, while it may seem as kind of a throwaway scene, it is one that does obviously introduce several key characters to us that are going to play very important parts in the story. So at this point, obviously the class are yet to make it to the island. We've established already that society as a whole is basically going to hell in a handcart. I mean, you thought COVID was bad. Here in this vision of Japan, the youth are uprising, and the government have put in a Battle Royale Act, where each year a nominated class are going to battle to the death to one left standing, as a shining example of the lengths the government is willing to go to retain the law and order of society. We also got introduced to Kitano, our head teacher, who was stabbed in the. We had a very big discussion of whether it's his ass or his thigh that Nobu stabbed him in. Did we even come to like a final?
I reckon it's his upper thigh rather than his buttock, but only because Kitano says something in next episode. But yeah, it doesn't matter. He got stabbed by a student.
And obviously, Takashi, being the cool cat that he is, was completely unfazed about this, but perhaps he knew what was lying ahead for this class. So, obviously, the class in this particular chapter, they're on the bus. They think they're going off on a school trip. And it's here that we sort of introduced to many of our sort of key players. We obviously got Nanahara, who's there with his best friend Nobu, who's been tempted back into going back to school because it's a school class trip, and that's important. See, as you mentioned on the previous episode, Stephen, there's certain events that will get the students to turn up, and the rest of the time they just want to skive off, it seems. So
yeah, I'm looking at like I said to you earlier, looking at my notes for this scene, I wrote, they went on the trip. They could both go to school, but they turn up to basketball matches and they turn up for school trips. Don't know where they're going. It's never mentioned, is it? They just wear a uniform, get on a bus, and they've all turned up to a man. So it must be a really good school trip.
I don't know where they're going. If it's anything like my school trips, where you went to like the glue factory or the box factory, it's really inane trips.
I remember, at sort of the age they are, so what did we decide? It was sort of like lower secondary school, sort of 15, 16.
Yeah,
well, I wouldn't have been going.
Freebies.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been going to anything because obviously it would have been exam time. But yeah, maybe a day trip to France, I think, was the most exciting thing we had. But that was to Normandy, which, and it's grim. It's grimmer than Dover when you left it. So yeah, but probably better than the trip they're going to have.
So, and I have to just point out here, it's really kind of convenient that we have an equal number of boys and girls on this trip that make up Class 3B.
So is that just a thing that happens in Japanese schools?
Well, I don't know.
By an accident of genetics, they always balance out? Or is there always a Class 3 which has the odd person in it or something? The ones that don't balance out.
I was just about to say, it's really going to screw up the roster if one person decides to go off sick or can't be tempted back for that school trip to wherever the hell this class are going. They're going to go off and see like the shrines or wherever Japanese school kids go for school trips. So
yeah, I mean, maybe it's a sort of a tradition thing. Maybe at the end of the year there is always a school trip and it's always a bit special. But they're on a coach and it's a long way. So and like you say, and just some of them just seem to be really up for it as well.
Yeah,
this is our chance.
It does kind of fly in the face of what we've come to expect from these students, because they just seem like any normal sort of class. They don't seem particularly disruptive or, like something out of a trauma movie. Because you expect that the way the film sets them up, they're going to be like like when you watch troll movies like Class of Nukem High, and they're just like old punks and just like trashing everything, and the bus is like covered in corrugated iron to keep them all in place.
No, they've all turned up. They're all wearing regulation school uniform. They all seem pretty straight kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there'll be some characters in the next chapter that we'll meet that are a little bit different, but none of them have got crazy hair or any particular distinguishing feature. Bad haircuts. That's about it, really. They just seem very good traditional Japanese school kids. And to be honest with you, if we didn't have that scene where we get the bum slash, let's call it that, you could almost make an argument that that Battle Royale is bullshit, and that there is no sort of rebellious youth, and this is just a tool by the totalitarian government to sort of just take over. But because we've seen it, and the day none of them went to school again, maybe there was a good reason none of them turned up. maybe it was an official day off and they were having a joke. I don't know. But yeah, there's this early bit of the film, the sort of the setting the scene in the film. I do think they make some missteps that maybe we really pick up on because we're being a bit we're diving deep into this, aren't we? We're being very forensic because
I think
we're
this is the problem, because when you watch this so many times, that you then start thinking. I remember the first few times I watched this, I've never once questioned like why the students are the way they are compared to how the intro tells us the way they are.
Yeah.
So it sort of only, and I mean obviously I think it's sort of balanced out by the fact that when we get on the island, that a lot of these kids are going to start showing their true colours.
Absolutely. I mean, the point is, in a little bit of time, the shit's going to hit the fan, and we won't really care what they were wearing on the school bus.
No.
And in terms of world building, it's I know the novel goes into it more, but it doesn't really matter, right? Because the general paradigm of the world that we're in on this film is a government makes school kids kill each other. Everything else doesn't matter, does it? Because that paradigm that we're in is already so horrific, ridiculous, challenging, whatever you want to call it. Doesn't really matter why they got there, does it?
Not at all. One of the key characters who we get a better introduction to in this sequence is Noriko. Now, we did obviously see Noriko back when Katana was attacked in the hallway, and she was kind of a bit shocked by all that was sort of happening there. But now she's obviously on the school trip. We find out that she's got sort of an interest in our leading man. And she, of course, is so, she's so wonderfully shy and about expressing this crush. So she decides that she's going to make him cookies, which another of the key characters in this film. I also have to say that when she gives them to him, what kind of an ass is Nobu? The fact that he just instantly dives in there. He doesn't wait to be offered. He's just straight in there before he even has chance to react.
Yeah, so Nobu, who let's face it, has come on the school trip even though he literally assaulted a teacher with a bladed weapon the last time we saw him. And
unprovoked as well.
Absolutely unprovoked, and as we'll find out later, hasn't been back to school since. Is an all-round dick, really? Because so as you say, Noriko's obviously sort of got a crush on Nanaharu Shuya. And he just dives in. Oh, these are really nice. I'm so glad I came. I mean, he's whatever the opposite of a cock blocker is as well, isn't he?
He's not so much a cock block. He's just a grenade.
Yeah.
It's sort of like you hope that she's got a friend that she doesn't really have too close a friendship with, so she can lob him her at him.
He is. I think we might talk about him more in our next episode, but yeah, he's not one of the most sympathetic characters that we meet in this film, and he's yet he should be really important because he is the best friend of our lead, and in any other film this would go in a completely different way. I'm assuming everybody listening to this podcast has watched the film. I can't believe anyone's going to come to this podcast without seeing it, right? So we know his fate, but I'm tippy toeing around it. But yeah, he's a dick, mate.
Yeah, that would certainly be one way of describing him, certainly. Yeah, when it comes to with Noriko, her background is a little undeveloped here compared to obviously when we compare it to the manga and the novel, which obviously has the space to do this. But Noriko's interesting in the fact that she doesn't belong to any of the group. She's not one of the basketball stars. She's not one of the popular kids, and she's certainly not one of the gangs. And she, along with several of the other classmates, has a group known as the Neutral Group. So they've got no real sort of qualms with anyone, and they've got no sort of affiliation to any particular sort of group. But she, as I said, she's really shy and adorable, and she's sort of like the one truly good person in this group. Everyone else has got their sort of flaws and their sort of issues, but and even Shuya is sort of got his own sort of issues, of, you know, carrying the guilt of his father's death and not knowing where he sort of stands his line, much less the acts he's willing to sort of participate in throughout this game, as we obviously come to. But Noriko's like this one pure symbol of innocence that we see throughout this film, and certainly it's certainly well established with this sort of opening that we see of her, because, you know, what's better way to introduce this sweet innocent girl than having to be the one who brings a snack.
Yeah, I guess, and again, there's some stuff that happens with this character later, which may expand upon this. Is she the one who actually does go to school on the first day that we see them? It is her, isn't it? So she is representing some kind of ideal schoolgirl. You know, she works hard, she goes to school, she bakes cookies, she has little girly crushes on people. She doesn't belong to any particular clique. I guess she's almost sort of something idealized, although not. You know, we're talking Japanese schoolgirls here. Quite often these things are fetishized, and we'll talk about that with maybe a couple of the other characters later. But yeah, she's very much sort of every girl. Can we say that?
Yeah.
She represents something very pure, and not to just us, the audience, and not just to sort of the Japanese audience, but it'll show that she represents some kind of purity, and the sort of girl, shall I say, the sort of daughter that everybody wants, without giving too much away later on. So she's a really important character, but really underdeveloped, and she exists for what she is rather than who she is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying there. I mean, certainly in the film she does suffer from being a little undeveloped, but when we look at like the novel, I mean, the relationship that she has with Shuya is pretty established before they even go on the trip. I mean, she helps him with his music and gives him like little notes and things, and her ambition really was to become a teacher. Although I'm not sure how keen she is to become a teacher after she sees what the teachers do in this film, but but yeah, I mean, as you said, right, she's just, you know, she's the good girl of the plot. She and she has obviously a crush on Shuya, and when we look at like the novel version and the manga version of Shuya, we established already the fact he's a musician, and we do see little glimpses of this in the flashback. And it's also worth noting that his guitar is called Wild 7. Which will obviously come more into effect in the sequel, but
indeed. But yes, interesting.
I just know that if I didn't mention that now, I'm sure as hell going to forget it. By the time it comes to be important. But yeah, I mean, I really like her character. I mean, it's as, you know, as stereotypical as the good girl she is. I never felt that she was sort of like the damsel in distress who needs to be saving. I mean, Shuya essentially looks after her, but it seems more just in tune with his character rather than the fact that she needs to constantly have someone to save her. Guys in this film certainly just seem to just willingly want to save her regardless, so she just seems to follow people around rather than being like a lead or someone with her own sort of sense of direction here. And I think that plays in well, especially to her good girl sort of image, the fact that she would be essentially kind of flustered by the fact that, you know, half the class has suddenly turned into homicidal maniacs and the rest are just basically losing their mind. about the situation that's now sort of facing them.
Yeah. Um, Also, I'd just like to mention about the actress actually.
Okay.
So it's played by a girl called Aki Maeda, who's, as possibly we'll say a few times again over this episode, she's an actress and singer. Um, we come across her before? We have. She plays a character in Gamera 3, Awakening of Iris, which is certainly a film we've talked about before. And she's also in, this is one for you, mate. She's also in Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All Out Attack from 2001. And for something more in my world, she's also in Linda, 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 which is a delightful Japanese film about girls, a Japanese school forming a band along with Bae Do-na, the Korean actress, which is really good. But more interestingly, her big sister, A Maeda, who is also a actress and singer, is the main film character in Battle Royale 2. So, they kept that one in the family. But yeah, she's nothing, not as big a star as the last person we talked about. But yeah, she plays the drummer in Linda, 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 which is where I know her from originally. But yeah, there we go, Aki Maeda.
Okay. Well, we're obviously talking about the differences as well between the source material and the film. It's also on this bus ride that in the manga, especially, that we are introduced to Shogo Kawada, who's the veteran from the previous game. Now, as I said, in the source material, he's a transfer student, but he's already part of the class. And I know in one of the versions, I think it's the book, he actually gets held back a year, and this is why he ends up going back into the game. It's not just the fact he's a veteran, as the film has to suggest. And we'll obviously get into more of his backstory a bit later, but when we have the scene where they're being gassed, he's like suddenly fully aware of the fact that of what's going to be happening to them, and starts basically trying to punch his way through the bus window. And it's this is sort of like the first sort of hint, really, to Shuya that something really isn't afoot. Well, as in the film, he's not introduced at all, and our other transfer student, Mitsuko, is also part of the class. He's actually a gang leader, but he's actually part of the class already, so that's how he's introduced as well. He's part of the he's already on the bus. He doesn't just get drafted in as this person who joined the game for fun, as the film introduces him as. But when we have that sort of build up to the whole bus being sort of gas, and we see like the glimpses of the military personnel on the road, and we get those little snare drum beats whenever they're on screen. That little bit of a military,
a little military two-step going on, isn't there?
That's right. Is that something you picked up like on your first off watching, or is it?
No, I think it's something I picked up on later watches. As I waxed lyrical last time, I did struggle with the world building aspect, and again on this rewatch, that moment I thought was kind of telling, because it's showing they are trying to create this world, and then they've got the sort of the musical. It's not really a musical cue, is it? It's like an oral cue, I suppose, of what the military is. It also reminded me of there's some other films, a lot of films that are set in Taiwan during the sort of the military dictatorship. Brighter Summer's Day is one of them, where it's school children on buses, and then as you drive past, you see tanks by the side of the road, or some other kind of sort of military people carriers and things like that, which again sort of there's a dissonance between kids on the school bus and the military outside, that are controlling the place. And it felt, I don't know if there's any relation between these two films, but it's a beat and a dissonance between those two worlds that I've seen in other places in other places as well. You've got an editing job ahead of you tonight.
I could, but I won't.
I haven't got my teeth in. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm getting old. Yeah, but it was. That's one of the notes I've taken, is that that's the moment that they just remind us, possibly because of everything we were saying earlier. Like they're on the bus, they're on a school trip, they're having some cookies, they're having a bit of a laugh, and but don't forget, everybody, this is a military state, and they give us that look at it, don't they?
Yeah, definitely so. And you can tell the teacher knows. It gives us that first sort of indication that he knows what's going on. As we see him like glancing at the military personnel, and I think he almost knows exactly what is happened. The fact that the class has been picked, because I think if he knew ahead of time that the class was going to be picked for this battle royale, I don't think he would have gone on the trip.
The teacher.
Yeah, the teacher.
Yeah. Well, I think that's quite. Again, we'll talk about this more next episode. But yeah, it's quite clear this is not what he wanted to do.
And so, like, oh, why did no other teachers choose to go on this? Because this is one teacher and 40 students.
Mm.
And then, in all my class trips, as I recall, it was sort of like one teacher and like 3 backup teachers to keep people in line and give you a bash over the head with a plastic cup if you got out of line. And
Although
suddenly,
we do have a tour guide, which was that was another incongruity. I never had tour guides when I went on school trips. I had just, like you say, maybe one teacher for every 10 kids, something like that. Enough
just
to keep in control.
You just had the teacher and what they just like barked orders for the crackly PA.
Pretty much, yeah. I don't ever remember having a smartly dressed tour guide, but maybe I just wasn't paying attention.
It's a classy bus service, you can tell, because the driver's wearing a hat. Rather than just some overweight guy sweating profusely as he...
And we've all got to have a collection for him at the end.
Really? Oh, we didn't have a collect for our driver.
Well, we didn't either. We got given a little bit of money by our parents to go, when we go to the museum or whatever it is that you're doing, to buy something in the gift shop at the end. The last thing you can do is give money off to the driver. I need to spend that on sweets and clearly medical aid if we've been on this one.
Yeah, clearly. I had to, also. I don't remember my teachers ever sitting at the back of the bus where this teacher is. He's sitting with the girls at the back of the bus, which is
there is. Yeah, that feels a little a bit U-tree, doesn't it? A bit creepy. Although I think again there are different sort of social mores, aren't they? I guess we're probably. I mean, you and I grew up. I grew up in the 70s and 80s. You grew up in the 80s and 90s. And the separation in the UK between teachers and children was very strong, whereas I think the Japanese school children are usually a little bit more respectful of the teachers when they're not slashing them across the arse. Again, this doesn't make any sense. Are they not coming to school, or are they good kids that have really good relationships with their teachers? And frankly, is the actual truth is that Kitano was a shit teacher. It was a hatchet job plotted by the rest of the school or something to get him to leave.
Yeah, because as we said in the previous episode, he leaves the day after he gets attacked by Nobu because, let's face it, nobody wants to deal with this.
And he never came back again. But the main teacher is clearly loves this class. Maybe he just liked it, Elwood, because for the last 6 months he's had nothing to do because they all stopped going to school, and he's been working on his novel or his university paper or something. That's why he likes them so much, because they've given him a break. You
say that, but we also, when we look at the source material, again, there's these references to the fact that not everybody goes along with what the government wants. I mean, obviously with Shuya's parents, depending on which version you read, they were seen as government dissidents, weren't they? So and trying to go against the trend, which led to them being killed or ostracized from their own families. So it's certainly not a popular choice to make, and certainly one that I think the teacher will soon find out is not a good choice to make either, to go against the act. But There's something about the fact that how we have that gas in sequence, though. It's not the old cliche way where you have like the gas seeping through the floors and it's so like, oh my god, mass panic. No, everyone's like all happy and awake, and then the next thing it's like almost like a finger snap, and then suddenly everyone's unconscious.
Yeah, see, I read that a different way because I remember going on school trips and we all fell asleep on the coach. And
Really?
so yeah, oh god, yeah.
I just remember ours was just chaos and anarchy of people just throwing stuff.
And then that's probably fun. I got it that they'd all kind of fallen asleep and the gas had happened that's keeping them asleep. But I'm actually, now you said it, maybe your reading of it makes more sense, that they've all been knocked out. What I don't understand is why our friend Shuya wakes up and seems utterly unaffected by it.
Yeah.
He's got a superpower that comes of no use at any other time in the film. But hey ho.
I had no idea. I mean, maybe I don't know, but what does it get him? It gets him clubbed over the head.
Yeah, which is another one, actually one of my favourite bits of the film, where this sort of tour guide woman in a red sort of almost air stewardess type outfit, turns around, gas mask is on. It's quite a striking visual image. It's one of the two really striking images of women in this film. The other one we'll come to next episode, I suspect. And she comes up to him, whacks him over the head with what is it? Is it a fire extinguisher?
No, it's a club.
It's a club, yeah, that's right. But it's a weapon for this purpose.
It's definitely
because you think she might come up and gas him, don't you? But no, she literally whacks him over the head with a club.
We got gassing money in this budget.
No, we've used all the gas up. That's why they all went out quickly. Yeah. But yes, yeah, but it's quite striking again. That's because she's kind of representing some kind of authority, isn't she? Because she's in a uniform, and you trust people in uniform, and they can, she'll tell you which side of the bus to look out of to see the sights, but no, she's been perverted to be a tool of the Battle Royale program, and because I think he must trust her, and he's obviously a little weirded out she's wearing a gas mask, but yeah, whack. Nice.
Yes, and it's also at the same moment that we enter a tunnel that they're actually gassed out. So it really sort of marks that transition from them being everyday school kids to now being in the program, which I thought was a really nice visual image. It's a subtle one, but it's, as I say, it's a nice visual sort of reference point there. The fact that you've got that transition point of them going from just being just Joe average school kids. And this is, with the film, it suggests that it's just one class per year that's put across, whereas we get hints in certainly in the manga and the novel that there's multiple games that are held throughout the year, and it's just the lottery that they hold for the classes just sort of picks out several classes to be put through this program. So
yeah, I seem to remember from the novel I got that feeling as well, and maybe there was sort of one per prefecture or something like that. Because but again, then that makes their utter ignorance of it even less likely. But yeah, and what you said about the tunnel, I guess we haven't really. We talked about the director last time, but he's not a hack. This is one of the great sort of Japanese directors with a really well regarded back catalogue, and this is not a you talked about trauma earlier. No, this is not a hacky, cheap, low budget film. This film has got a really quite talented cast who'll all go on to great things, and a really good director, obviously at the end of his career and his life. But there are moments like that which show you this. This is not cheap crap. This is actually a quality film, which is possibly why it got so much attention in terms of censorship and international and local outrage. because no one cares about the straight to, this isn't a straight to video film. This isn't a Takashi Miike film. This is a proper feature release.
Yeah, definitely so. His further you mentioned already the fact of his legacy as a director. I mean, he directed the Japanese sequences for Tora Tora Tora, along with Chishiro Masuda. And we mentioned already that Akira Kurosawa was also involved in the Japanese sequences, as along with Hido Oguni and Raizo Kikushimi handled the screenplay for the Japanese sequences. Kurosawa, interestingly, was uncredited for his contributions. So, but I think history itself has sort of corrected those things along the way, and really after then he goes into sort of like his Yakuza movies as he does things like Street Mobster and Outlaw Killers. He does the Battles Without Honor and Humanity saga, which we mentioned already took a very long time to come over here after this film. I would have thought they would have been rushed through, that when this film sort of had this big impact, that they would be basically buying up any Fukusaku sort of properties, the same way that when Audition came out, the fact that pretty much any Takashi Miike film that there was available, they were snapping up. So you had things such as Fullmetal Yakuza and Agitator, the lower class pictures, and Food of the New Generation being sort of snapped up along with like his more recent fare, and things like like Dead or Alive trilogy and Ishe the Killer.
But no, that's a very that's a very interesting point actually, because we look at you look at the director of Ring. I can't remember his name, but his back and forward, his catalogue at the time, there wasn't so much to go to, but all his films since all get British releases, and they get more and more dreadful and more useless. But they you can get Rabbit Horror on a UK DVD, which is just a laugh. Actually, Rabbit Horror is not one of his, actually, to be fair. What's it called? I can't remember. But they're rubbish films, and they still get releases. But you're quite right. Fukusaku's films, other than a fairly recent release of Battles Without Honor and Humanity, I'm thinking in the last 5 years, I can't really see anything that that sort of played on the success and the notoriousness of this film. And it can't be down to genre, because, like you say, anything Takashi Miike put out, they released or tried to get hold or did something about.
Yeah, but this film is very sort of unique in the fact that when it came out, there wasn't no sort of rush to sort of either do an American remake of this film or to find similar films to come out. And I think it's because it falls into that Deadliest Game genre of films, and there's been so many of those films throughout the year. I mean, obviously we've got this, we got there's films like the 80s. I think it's like Playing the Game with Rutger Hauer. You've got Turkey Shoot, the Brian Trenchard Smith exploitation movie, which is also really good. And so you've had these sort of like people hunting each other for sport games, but we'd never really seen it with school kids. And I think the problem is that once you've done like a new spin on something, you can't really do it again. If you're doing it with adults, there's always new spins to be found. There's throwaway victims to be had, but the sort of shock that it's school kids battling each other, I think really sort of made it a hard one to sort of think, oh well, can we just do that again? And I think when you look at Battle Royale 2, you can tell that the format's sort of struggling. In the fact that they had to constantly like mix things up. They had to add all these sort of like different sort of quirks to the game to sort of keep it interesting, with that sort of tag team collar format that they had, where if you had girl 1 gets shot, then boy 1 gets blown up as well. So
Yeah, of course, it didn't stop. Something we haven't really spoken about, but it didn't stop someone else picking it up and dragging it out for three books and 4 films. So, about 20 years later. But yeah, yeah, and I'm not a fan of Battle Royale 2 either. I find that tedious. So
Really?
spoilers.
I,
If you're going to do
I,
a podcast about that, find another guest.
it's funny you say that. We've had people asking if we're going to do Battle Royale 2 after this. I said we got 26 episodes, so I don't know what state we're going to be in at the end of this, but
Yeah, well, maybe I'll have come round, but
you
I,
hear that
I
opening orchestration of Battle Royale 2 and you'd be like, alright, it's Battle Royale time again, and then you get like 12 episodes and it's like, oh no, I know what this is.
no, I mean there are things in Battle Royale too, which are kind of hinted at from the novel. Um, there's bits in there that are like, but yes, it doesn't have this. There is something, although it comes from absolutely that sort of that deadliest game, people hunting people, sort of B movie thing,
Yeah.
or C movie even. Um, there's nothing else like Battle Royale, and some of it is down to the fact it's children, and that's what caused a lot of the outrage. And I guess you can't. That is the spin. that is the spin on the genre. Is that these are kids. Where do you go next? Animals shooting each other? I don't know. I was just reading something actually the other day that Fukasaku picked it up because it reminded him of back in the Second World War when he was 15. He was working in a munitions factory making weapons, and that's what resonated with him. That he was a child being basically paid to kill other people, which I thought was quite a telling sort of assessment. So this is when he was reading the novel. But this is why this director was attracted to this story, because I don't think you would. Yeah, I just don't think it would have attracted your average Japanese filmmaker. This isn't the sort of story that attracts the mainstream, is it? And it's really well done.
Do you think, though, obviously considering his legacy as a director, that it made the studio actually invest some money into the production rather than just treating this as a throwaway VCD project?
I absolutely do. I absolutely think that Kinji Fukasaku would have either he brought money along to the project, yeah, and he made that project tenable and attracted investors, or he enabled, or bringing him on bought the invest. Sorry, I'm trying to get the other way I'm trying to think about it. Either he either drove it, or someone got him to give a pet project some legitimacy. I mean, he is not a young man at this stage. He is ill at this stage. Maybe it turned out better than people thought. But I'm absolutely certain his name helped get this film made. And I'm sure there's an alternate universe where this is made by somebody else and in that sort of that DTV market, which still could have produced a good film. And that's where other Kurosawa came from. That's where Miike comes from. But it wouldn't have had the gloss, and it wouldn't have had the shine, and it wouldn't have had the young starlets that it has got in it. So yeah, for sure. I'm rambling. Edit me.
That's okay. Just one of the few last points while we're obviously looking at this group, one of the few times that they're all going to be together. For the casting, they auditioned roughly around 66,000 actors, which narrowed down to 800 potential cast members, and the finalists were subjected to a 6-month period of physical fitness training under the supervision of Fukasaku, who eventually whittled down the cast to his 42 out of the 800. And it's kind of interesting, obviously, we mentioned already about Takashi Takano. The fact that he's obviously got this legacy for doing many things, including being a game show presenter. Because in the manga, especially in the English adaptation, the game is presented as a reality show, and this is some real sort of taking some real leniency with the adaptation, because it does come to bite them about halfway through, the fact that it doesn't quite sync up with the actual Japanese translation of what they think they're selling. So it's kind of funny the fact that you have a game show host hosting essentially a game show, and we see this again in the Running Man. When we look at who hosts the Running Man, it's got Richard Dawson, who's obviously well known for being a game show host as well. And I mean, I really like Richard Dawson in Running Man just because he's the only person who manages to respond to an Arnie one-liner.
He was the original host of Family Feud.
And he was also born in my current location.
He was born in Gosport. Oh my word!
He was.
Who knew? Did you know someone from Hogan's Hero was born in? And he was married to Diana Dawes. Oh, this is another podcast altogether. This. Gosh, we could go and visit. We could do a whole show on this fella. Wow.
So, I also love the fact on Wikipedia he's listed as having 3 children, including Mark. Why is Mark singled out for?
Is that because Mark has some fame of his own?
British American entertainment manager, the CEO of Dawson Reeves and Zutat Entertainment Group. I don't know. I thought it was just the child they kept in the basement or something.
I think he worked. I think he also went on to work in. Looking at Wikipedia, this is not my own knowledge, but it looked like he went on to work in other entertainment shows. And obviously he's become famous because of his mum, Diana Dawes, mysteriously ferrying away her money. So he doesn't know, he hasn't got his inheritance because she hid it away in banks all over Europe. And there's a code and no one knows how to answer it. Again, this is brilliant. We found our next show, mate. Oh, Wikipedia, I love it.
Anything else that you want to bring up on this?
No, it's interesting. I didn't think we were going to be able to talk this long about this scene. There's a couple of things we haven't spoken about, but I think I'd like to bring it up. There is another character which is introduced, which is what's her name's? Noriko's best friend. Is it Megumi? Is that her name?
Yeah. Not too good with a camera.
No, not too good with her camera. But she does. That photograph that she takes is of some importance to them later on, at least
of course.
As an aid memoir. She won't last much longer. But
Can I just what you said about that? When we look at the picture, Nobu's head is cut off.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, very apt.
I just about to say, because depending on which version you have, he's either going to get his head blown off or it's shot off, so it works out kind of well with that little foreshadowing there.
Yeah, again, this is not a film made by amateurs. And I'm you and I both know very little happens in a film that isn't meant to happen. Although sometimes it's coincidence, but on the whole, that's it. And so that will have been absolutely defined. But yes, that picture will be used to increase the bond between our 2 lead characters later on, because both other people in the picture won't last as long.
It's a memento of happier times. It's one of those few mementos of reminders of the innocence, really. It's sort of like, look, there was a time when we weren't all psychotic killers and trying to take down a government.
Absolutely. It's the one point in the film where, just for that moment, they literally are 15, 16-year-old kids, yeah?
Yeah.
They're having some cookies, they're having a laugh, having a bit of a flirt, they're in their school uniforms, going on the school trip. That is seconds later, film time at the very least, their innocence, whatever innocence they may have left, is gone. So yeah, so I just wanted to bring that up, but that's about it, and we've still managed to talk this long about this. This is remarkable.
So that brings us to the end of tonight's episode. Thank you as always for listening. If you haven't done already, please do hit the like and subscribe button, whether you're listening to us on the Battle Royale podcast feed, or if you're joining us through the Asian Cinema Film Club, where we're also running these episodes as well. So you have a choice of 2 feeds to subscribe through. You can check out our full archive of episodes on our blog, which is asiancinemafilmclub.wordpress.com. And while there, why not check out our other podcast, the Asian Cinema Film Club, where on our most recent episode, we're checking out Johnny To's Election, a real fantastic Hong Kong triad thriller. And again, if you want to follow us, you can do. We're on Facebook under Asian Cinema Film Club. We're on Instagram as well, and we are on Twitter under AC Film Club. You can get in touch with us via the email, which is battleroyalepcast@gmail.com. And you can let us know your thoughts on Battle Royale, or any particular things we should be looking out for on upcoming episodes. We'd love to hear any feedback you wish to give us, or share any thoughts on the film. It's all very welcome indeed. I do also have to give a shout out to the Deep Blue Sea podcast, who not only inspired this podcast, but also had myself and my co-host from over at Movies and Tea, Kim, on as a guest, as we were talking about the surprise party in that film. Definitely a really fun podcast to check out, and some real deep dives into the history and legacy and production of that fantastic shark movie. But make sure you join us next time as we hit the island and we find out what exactly is in store for our students as we look at Chapter 3, Today's Lesson. Until then, good night.